time for our political panel for your Wednesday morning. Joining me in studio is ACT's Simon Court and from the Greens, Ricardo Menéndez. March, good morning. Good to see you both. We were just talking about cryptocurrency, the ATMs. Simon, it seems to me like, well, what's the problem here? You got to put your face on there. There's a few checks that happen. Is there a problem?
Well, I think the problem is that people are concerned about money laundering, about organised crime getting a major foothold in New Zealand and people being able to launder the proceeds of crime.
Yeah.
So if it's correct that there are adequate biometric controls and safeguards, then I'm sure the Minister will consider that when developing the policy. What
do you reckon? Because, I know you're a man of freedom. If you want to use a crypto ATM, it's your right, isn't it?
Again, I understand Nicole McKee, the Minister responsible for anti-money laundering, is developing a policy on that, Ryan, so I'm sure she'll take that into account.
What about you, Ricardo? Have you ever got Bitcoin or?
No, I haven't. But what I acknowledge though is that this is a relatively new and emerging technology that is more widespread use now, and so I do think welcome, for a change, the Ag Party's minister looking into it, because at the end of the day, what we do need to be led by is evidence, and we just can't take the industry's word for mouth. We actually have to engage on the risks that this technology may present to New Zealand when it comes to organised crime.
Ricardo, isn't it great we're getting rid of this silly layer of bureaucracy that holds the whole country up?
Isn't it telling that whenever the government looks at changing issues in local government, they start off with the agencies that protect our natural environment, which is what regional councils often are tasked with, including the well-being of our water.
But then the mayor's job, all the regional mayors, they come together, they take over the function, Simon. That's the idea, isn't it?
They take over the governance, Ryan. People's major concern with regional councils is it adds another layer of planning and another layer of bureaucracy to what is already a complicated planning system. Chris Bishop and I delegated with replacing the RMA with a new system based on property rights, something ACT campaigned on. And what Cabinet has already agreed to is there'll only be one plan per region in the new system. So it makes sense that we align the form with the future function. And that's what yesterday's announcement was all about.
So one plan per region. So how many plans per country in the country then?
Well, we've got currently about 14 regional councils, so that's what we should expect. At the moment, we've got 67 towns, cities, districts, and 14 regional councils. And these things are layer upon layer of policies, objectives, and rules.
But this is the thing, Ricardo. So if we get one plan per, 14 plans for the country, then that means, less consenting, less time spent doing all of that stuff. There won't be the need for these regional councils.
But this is the thing, I'll give you an example. In Otago, we had the regional council putting forward a plan to better protect water quality and stop water pollution, right? The government, instead of allowing local decisions being made by local people, got in the way, through urgency, introduced a legislation that prevented this plan going through. The government is getting in the way of regional councils doing their work to protect our natural environment, and we do need entities, particularly in rural areas, who are tasked at responding to long-term challenges of whether people will be having access to drinking water, as to whether we're, for example, throwing too much wastewater into our oceans.
Totally, but that's what the mayors will do.
Well, but I think
we elect the mayors, you know what I mean?
But I think one of the challenges will be whether they will do it with the same degree of focus that the regional councils are meant to do it. No one is saying that there aren't improvements to be made at the local government level, but we've got to recognise the central government needs to get on board.
Simon, do you think Winston Peters is actually going to go with Labor?
Look, I think when Winston Peters said that he might want to campaign on replacing the Regulatory Standards Act or getting rid of it, I think that reflects a real backward way of looking at what New Zealanders need right now. The Regulatory Standards Act is designed to test whether laws actually work, whether we need them. We had a previous government that for 6 years made laws that didn't work.
Simon, what it is another layer of bureaucracy, isn't it? Ricardo, you'll agree with this.
It's a sea of yellow tape, let's just put it that way. For all the complaints of red tape, we've got a sea of yellow tape. The staffers at the Ministry of Regulations, David Seymour's PREP project, are being paid more than the average public servant.
I know, it doesn't.
There's hardly any of them, Ricardo. But here's the point, Ryan. We haven't had a proper test for whether a law actually works, whether the benefits outweigh the costs.
It's called an election.
No, every single law has to be subject to this test. Otherwise, you end up with things like the earthquake strengthening laws, which have cost billions and billions of dollars, low-risk areas.
My problem with this,
haven't
Simon,
saved a single life.
I hear you. But my problem with this, Simon, is that everyone was so critical of Jacinda Ardern and Grant for their whole well-being stuff, you know, the well-being budget, and you have to tick this box, and it has to make people feel good, and it's like, this is nonsense. This is kind of the same thing, because there's no legal applicability to it.
I 100% reject that. What the Regulatory Standards Act will do is allow businesses, property owners, individuals who identify a law that unfairly impacts them, a law that clearly doesn't work and do what it says, to go to a Regulatory Standards Board and demand to have the law reviewed. It also puts
and the government can ignore
it. Sure, but it puts every minister on notice. If you want to pass bad laws that don't work, you're going to be in the public spotlight.
But this is the mask-off moment for him, right? Look at the names that he mentioned that he thinks we're getting in the way of. Companies and businesses are supposed to actually the well-being of our communities and the natural environment. We do have things called regulatory impact statements that are supposed to analyse bills. We have a select committee process to scrutinise those bills, all things that David Seymour has constantly been quite happy to ignore. So it's hypocritical for him to talk about good lawmaking when he's done the opposite.
Simon, you know greyhound racing, Winston's like the regional councils. Could they use the regulatory standards bill to get some money for the fact their industry's been cancelled?
Well, because that proposal came before the Regulatory Standards Act, which has passed, it's no longer a bill, it's an act. They can't use that, but what they do have is ACT MPs like Cameron Luxton asking on their behalf, is this fair to take this industry and basically hang it up without compensation, take all the funds that they've raised over many years that they hold in trust and take them?
But in future,
if there was the champion,
I know you are,
subject to bad regulation.
In future, if there was another industry cancelled, would the regulatory standards bill be the vehicle through which they might be able to get some redress for that?
Yeah, absolutely. It challenged the government. If you're going to make a bad law that takes our property, damages our business, and in many cases doesn't actually do what it says it will do, there should be a way for citizens to have recourse to a regulatory board.
Okay. Very quickly, because I've run out of time, but an age of retirement, what should the age of super entitlement be, Ricardo?
It should remain at 65, and if the government is so worried about the costs, they should be looking at a tax system as opposed to actually making people work for longer without access to superannuation.
Rich get less, poor get more, basically.
I mean, right now we do have a wealth inequality problem, and I do think the mega rich should be paying their fair share. Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, but you think that they shouldn't be getting the super, the rich people?
No, that's what we have a tax system for. I mean, so that's universal. We support that. And if rich people are wanting to accumulate a lot of wealth, that's why we got to look at the tax system.
Yeah. What about you, Simon?
Over time, we're living longer, healthier lives. It's mature and responsible to consider what a future age might be. It's highly irresponsible to say we're just going to tax Kiwis more in order to pay benefits out at the rate that they were agreed on, back last century, where people were living much shorter and less healthy lives.
The decision is going to be made for us because we won't be able to afford it soon. That's the reality, isn't it? Good to see you both this morning. Thanks so much for coming in. That is the Greens' Ricardo Menéndez March and ACT's Simon Court